Hi there everyone, it's Alex. Welcome back to Drummer Artificer Studios. In my last video, I talked about taking this new Propane Forge I built over to Lakes of Fire and did the blacksmithing there. I figured today I'd actually make a video and focus on how I built this forge. So like I said, I built this thing. You can go onto Amazon and you can find a good 1 or 2 burner beginning propane blacksmith forge for $200-300, but I wanted to build something that would last me a long time and would fit all the needs that I had in a forge. I wanted it to be a little bit longer so that I could do some longer pieces such as knives and daggers where you have to heat up the entire blade at one time. So I wanted to make sure I had a 3-burner forge. But because I did this as a grant project through Lakes of Fire, I wanted to build it from scratch opposed to finding one that would work for me because they were giving me the money to build this thing. So the main body of this forge is built out of an old 30-pound propane tank from a high and low lift. I took it to a local company that fills tanks for you and asked them to empty it. They did it and then didn't end up charging me because they had never actually emptied a tank for anybody before and they didn't have it in their system of how much it would cost. So they very kindly did it for free. But if you go this route, you can use all sorts of stuff for the body of your forge. You can use large diameter black steel pipe, all sorts of stuff. If you go this route and you go with an old propane tank that you get emptied or you for some reason empty it yourself, which isn't the wisest because it's got explodable gas in it, you need to be sure that you properly clean out the tank before you do any cutting or welding on it. You have to run water in it multiple times to make sure there's no residue or residual liquid propane left in it. Because if there is, as soon as you start cutting on this, it has the potential to light on fire, and if it's for some reason still under pressure, it will blow up. So be very careful when doing this. I did a lot of research online about how to properly clean these out before I did any cutting on it. But like I said, it's a 30-pound high and low tank. So this was the front of the tank. All the valves were here, or the top of the tank. All the valves were located right here. The handles were on it. I cut the handles off, cut out a rectangle where the valves were, and that became the basis for this opening I have. I then went and I have another opening cut in the back. I'll show you later. And then I cut the top off of the tank so that I could turn it into the door. On the side over here, I have a set of barrel pin hinges so that the door can come completely off when transporting or when I need to change the insulation. And I have a little latch I welded together right here that just holds it shut. I slightly lift that and then the entire thing hinges open. Like I said, it's got barrel pin hinges, so the door just comes right off. Besides the tank, which was a gift to me, and the raw steel I used for making the hinges and brackets and everything, all the physical parts I had to purchase I got off Amazon, so I will have links to all of those down in the description. The inside of the door, the bottom of the forge, and then the back of the tank are all filled with a refractory cement. It mixes just like cement mortar, and it is heat resistant. So I did the bottom first. I built foam core walls that I was able to put in the opening in the top and the bottom that I poured the refractory cement in around. I did had to come back in with a fire caulk to kind of glue the pieces back in because they popped out. So in the future, if I was to do this again, I would probably end up welding some bolts wherever I was going to put the refractory cement so that the cement would have something to grab onto and is less likely to pop out of it. But like I said, I've got about 1.5 to 2 inches refractory cement in the bottom, and then the door and the back are completely filled with refractory cement. Going around on the inside of the forge, I have 3 inches of a ceramic fiberglass fire insulation that is designed for kilns and forges and other such heat implement devices such as this. I then have fire brick lining the bottom of it to give me a firm surface to be able to set all of the steel on. And I have it so that the fire brick pretty much lines up with the opening inside the door. These brackets I built to hold more panels of fire brick so that I'm able to adjust the size of the opening I have. That's simply so that I can control the heat loss a little bit better, and if I want to start doing something such as forge welding, I'll need to be able to close off the front and the back a little bit better just so I can get some higher temperatures inside the forge. Like I said, I have an opening in the back of the forge. It has another bracket so that if I want to shut that off entirely, I can just slip a piece of fire brick in there, and now I have no rear opening on the forge to lose heat. It will again help more heat build up inside the body of the forge, but it also does make more heat come out the front, so it gets very hot standing in front of it. The other thing that this does is it allows me to slip longer pieces of metal into it. So if I say wanted to work on a sword that was 3 feet long, the forge is only about 20 inches, but this will allow me to stick the part I'm not working on right out the back of the forge so I can move it back and forth and heat the entire thing at one time. So where the burners enter the forge body, I have 3 sections of steel tubing that I welded onto the top of the tank. I had to cut out the openings in the top, and then I welded these collars on so that I can easily slip the burners down inside the forge. My initial plan was to drill and put set screws in it to help hold it in place, but I've actually so far found that it just slides right in, and then the set screws that are on the burner collars themselves act as a little shelf and prevent them from going anywhere. But this was a fairly simple thing to do. Just make sure that before you cut and weld these in place, if you build one, that you know the proper distancing between the burners. I somehow managed to luck out in that I did the collars first before I assembled the burner rig, but I was still able to get the plumbing to work right for the burners so that everything fit. The burners for the forge, again, I bought these off Amazon, so they were pre-built. You can build your own. There are instructions online for how you can build forge burners, but I wanted to go with something that was factory made. And they all just slide into these pipes that I welded onto the top. You can see that this one was used most. It's the stainless steel on it has already started to deform a bit, but that's okay. It doesn't really affect the shape of the heat that comes out of it. But they're all stainless steel burners that I used brass and copper plumbing fittings to do all of this plumbing up here. Each burner has its own quarter turn shutoff valve. So if I am just working on something small and I'm just using the front burner, I can turn it so just the front burner is on and the other 2 are not on. And then while this one is going, if I need to work on something larger, all I have to do is turn on the next burner and I'm good to go. At the end of it, before I have my fitting for my hose, I have another quarter turn shutoff valve, and that just makes it so that I can turn all 3 burners off real quickly. The last major part of this forge was my supply line. So this is a 12-foot braided steel propane supply line built into a regulator valve with a pressure gauge. So I know exactly how much pressure I'm running it on. Usually I was running the forge at about 10 psi, and it worked perfect for me. So this is the normal valve that would screw into the tank. I built this device, which goes between the regulator and the tank, so that it's another quarter turn shutoff valve, and it makes it so that if something goes wrong, if the hose catches on fire, if I catch on fire, if somebody else working on it catches on fire, something drastically goes wrong, somebody that is not in the exact area I'm working on the forge can run off, and instead of having to twist the valve on top of the propane tank, they can just give this a quick turn, and now the entire thing is shut off and the fuel will stop. And it's a nice safety feature to make it so that other people can shut stuff off if something happens to you while you are working. So the stand on this forge, instead of doing what I saw a lot of people do and mount it on a cart so it's easy to move around, or build some form of angle iron stand to hold it, we recently had our hammock stand that we had on our back porch fail on us. So instead of throwing it away, I cut up the hammock stand and turned it into the stand for the forge. I have brackets welded onto the bottom that slide right into these poles, and the entire thing can come apart. It's got a bracket in the middle, so it comes into two sections with the small part that joins it, and it all disassembles to make it easy to go into a vehicle. I just had this on hand. That's why I used it. You can do whatever you want to manage to do it. I've seen a lot of people that actually just welded little feet onto the bottom so it sits on top of a tabletop or a bench. If you do that, just be sure that you put something underneath of it that is flame resistant so that the heat from this doesn't melt or burn whatever it's resting on. After I was done building the forge and I had test fired it to make sure everything worked, I primed it using a heat resistant engine primer, and then I painted it using, again, a heat resistant ceramic spray paint that is designed for engine blocks and other things that will heat up. On the front, it has started to come off, but that's because at the opening here, you've got a close to 2,000 degree flame coming straight out of it. So it is starting to come off on the front there, but I can clean it and repaint it as needed. I then, for the heck of it, so that people could find me, I created a stencil that has the QR code for this channel right on it to make it easy for people to look up the channel when I'm out talking to them while I'm working, so that if they ask what other stuff I do, I can say just follow the handy QR code. So there you have it. That was a simple rundown on what I did to build my propane forge. I didn't want to put together a tutorial on this one, because if you want to build your own forge, I want you to be able to build it the way you want it to accomplish what you need it to do. So do your research, check out websites, check out ones that you can purchase. You might be able to find one on a marketplace, whatever. But do plenty of research so that you know what you're doing, so that you get it right the first time and you don't have to spend the effort and money to keep building them as you go along. The body on this one are perfect. The only thing I might do is I might still do some modifications up here to put in a secondary valve so that I can control the amount of fuel that is coming out of it when I'm not actively forging. But I don't need to do that. I ran this for 4 days at Lake Sapphire for about 6 hours a day, and I only went through about half of a 40-pound propane tank. So it's very fuel efficient. I don't know the actual burner size, the orifice size on these. It wasn't listed on the manufacturer page on Amazon, so I'd have to measure them to be able to calculate what the actual consumption rate is. But knowing now that I could go an entire week-long event on a single 40-pound propane tank, it is very fuel efficient and so easy to transport, so much easier than my coal forge. So hopefully some of you that are interested in blacksmithing might give a try building one of these, or you might buy one. Either way. I will be doing more videos in the future specifically on blacksmithing techniques to add in with my jewelry technique ones. So stay tuned, and we'll see what we can come up with next time.